Aiden, what are you doing? What on earth happened here? I found my grandson looking cold, wrapped in a blanket and cowering in the corner of the garage, and I rushed over to him in a panic. Grandma, it's okay. It happens all the time. Don't worry about it. That's right. It's his punishment for always causing trouble. What? I reacted with a frown to the statement made by my daughter-in-law, who had quietly stood behind me. After that, being trapped in the garage, I encouraged my grandson and decided to take action. Let's escape, Aiden. Huh? I will protect you no matter what. I'll rescue you from here, so just wait. I said this and took my mobile phone out of my pocket and called someone. My name is Mary. I've reached the age of 70 and run a candy store with my sister, Dorothy. After my husband passed away and I was left alone, I seemed to be standing on the brink of despair for a while. My sister, who couldn't bear to see me like that, invited me to join her. This shop belongs to my sister and her late husband, and I'm here to help, so to speak. My sister's husband died quite some time ago as well. This shop, a memento of her husband, is something she's determined to protect, and I want to support her in that. So I decided to work as a helper. Mary, what are we going to do for the New Year's celebration? My sister has always doted on me. She acted as a parent in place of our busy parent. To me, my sister was indeed like a mother. I guess we'll probably go to Oliver's place again this year, huh? I've promised to show up, and I've told Aiden as well. Oliver is my son. He has a child with his wife, Emma, and that's my grandson, Aiden. By the way, how old is Aiden now? I think he's 20 years old. Is he still staying at home all the time? At my sister's words, I let my expression darken. My grandson Aiden apparently started shutting himself at home after attending college for a while. It seems he was bullied, and he even dropped out of college this year. Currently, he's unemployed and doesn't step out of the house at all. It seems so. Really? Aiden used to be such a social and cheerful child. My sister is right. Up until high school, my grandson was lively and had a life that had nothing to do with shutting himself at home. But then, one day, he suddenly became reclusive, and I was unable to hide my surprise when I heard about it. Then you should take this to him. As I recalled the situation and looked gloomy, my sister handed me some sweets. Dorothy, here! When you're feeling down, having some sweets and taking it easy is the best. The candy Aiden used to love is back in stock. If you like, take it to him. My sister, who smiles so brightly, is reliable and shed a bright light on my darkened heart. Time passed and the season turned to the new year. I was visiting my son's house. It must have been cold, right? Come on in, please. My son's wife took my coat and guided me into the living room. I thought she was really considerate and a good person, but then something happened that nullified that impression. Thanks, Emma. By the way, where's Aiden? I couldn't find my grandson anywhere. Even though he usually stays holed up at home, he shows his face and smiles at me whenever I visit. But on this day, he's nowhere to be found. I had heard my son would be back from work in the evening, but I haven't been told anything about my grandson. Is he in his room? That's what I thought when I was about to head there. Aiden's out shopping right now, Emma shouted, as if to stop me in my tracks. I jumped in surprise, but even more shocking were her words. Shopping? Aiden is able to leave the house now? My grandson, who hadn't left the house for the past year, was taking an unexpected big step. I was so moved that I inadvertently let out a loud cry. Yes, it seems he finally found the courage. I felt a slight unease in Emma's forced smile, but at that moment, I didn't dig into it, because my son's wife was truly devoted and dependable. I had never once looked at her with a suspicious gaze. Since my son was an emergency doctor, he rarely came home, so the household matters were almost entirely left to his wife, Emma. That's why she quit her job. She wanted to dedicate herself to her family and raise her son properly. She had overcome the challenges of raising him alone with those thoughts in mind. I had no reason to suspect that Emma would do anything to her grandson, but now I live with a lifetime of regret. If only I had noticed my daughter-in-law's hidden side at that time, my grandson might not have suffered like this. I'm making your favorite steak for dinner tonight, Mary. Oh my, you didn't have to go to all that trouble. Not at all. You've always been so good to us. Please, let me do this much. Thank you. Here, this is for Aiden. The candy that Aiden used to love is back in stock. Saying that, I handed over a box of assorted candies, and she smiled at me with pleasure. I was helping Emma prepare dinner, but when I looked at the clock, it was already past 7 p.m. Speaking of which, Aiden hasn't come back yet. Isn't it getting too late for shopping? He just called me. He'll be staying at a friend's house today. A friend? He's been staying inside the house all the time, but it seems he's made an internet friend recently. He'll be staying at their house today. Something's off. If he had the courage to do that, why would he be cooped up at home? I continued to prepare dinner with those doubts in my mind. I felt something was off about my daughter-in-law's explanation. I wanted to see the truth, with my own eyes. Thinking so, I slipped out of the living room while my daughter-in-law was busy preparing dinner. I quietly visited my son's room, making sure not to make any noise, only to find out that no one was there. Rather, the room was completely empty. What is this? Where's Aiden? Aiden? Where are you? Something was wrong. I thought so and started walking around my son's house. It was built in an old-fashioned way, with a long corridor running through it. The view of the garden from that corridor was always breathtaking, but today something felt off about it. That garage, has it been cleaned up? This house originally belonged to my husband, and it's his family home. Now my son and his family live there, so I knew that garage had been there for a long time. But, for some reason, the garage that was dirty last year had been cleaned. It had changed as if someone had put a hand to it, and I couldn't help but wonder why. I was about to approach the garage, changing into the sandals left in the garden, when it happened. "Found you! Mary, what are you doing?" My son's wife's shouting voice rang out, as if to stop me from entering the garage. Surprised by her loud voice, I involuntarily jumped back. "You suddenly disappeared, and I've been looking all over for you." "Emma, I'm sorry. I thought I'd take a look at the garden, as it's been a while." "Oh, come on. Please let me know next time. This house is so big, it's hard to notice if anything happens." Her laugh was somehow frightening, and I took a step back, forcing a smile. "Aiden came home when he heard you were here, Grandma. He's in the kitchen now. Shall we go back?" Came home. That one sentence filled me with unease again. For my grandson who had been staying home, a chance to play with friends should have been extremely valuable. I was happy that he was pleased to see me, but would he really come home just because of that? My suspicions grew towards my son's wife as we headed back to the living room together. But on the way, I didn't overlook it. The fact that my grandson's shoes were next to the garage. And after this, I was to find out that my grandson had been leading a truly desperate life. "Come on, the steak is ready. Let's eat." My son's wife handed me a plate and encouraged me to eat, but I couldn't find my grandson anywhere. No matter how much I looked around, I couldn't even sense his presence. Puzzled, I decided to ask, "Hey, where's Aiden? You said he came home, right?" I had been concerned about my grandson ever since I arrived, and my son's wife seemed to sigh in frustration at my questions. "Aiden's in the kitchen." "The kitchen?" "He takes his meals in the kitchen." "What?" I was genuinely shocked by what she said. I recalled my grandson's room earlier and the shoes by the garage. I hastily stood up and headed to the kitchen, where my grandson was. "Aiden?" "Grandma?" There he was, standing and eating a hamburger. I noticed the hamburger he was eating, but what surprised me even more was my grandson's drastically changed appearance. He used to love sports, and he had a good physique. But my grandson standing there had lost all his flesh, so emaciated that his collarbone and other bones were sharply protruding. His gaunt and unhealthy appearance made me let out a cry that was almost a scream. "Aiden, what happened to you? Your body." "Grandma, please help." "What are you doing, Aiden?" The moment my grandson tried to say something, my son's wife appeared, cutting him off. My grandson, whose face looked like he might burst into tears at any moment, now stared at his mother in fear. "Mary, we have this delicious meat. Let's eat it quickly, shall we? Just ignore Aiden." Saying that, my son's wife tried to coax me away from the kitchen. I refused and stood in front of her as if shielding my grandson. "Emma, what is going on here?" "What do you mean?" My son's wife stared at me with a fiend, innocent look, trying to play dumb. Her insincere behavior irritated me and fueled my anger. "Don't play dumb, please. Why is Aiden eating in the kitchen all by himself? And just a hamburger, at that?" Oh, this is his punishment. I involuntarily shuddered at her, as she said it with a smirk, as if it were a trivial matter. She continued speaking, laughing with a troubled look, and lowering her eyebrows while looking at my grandson, who was hiding behind me. Today, I asked him to clean the bathroom, but he didn't do it properly. It's part of his discipline. Is there a problem with that? I felt a terror at my son's wife's stance on discipline. Just because he failed to clean once, he has to endure this? It's too strange. She must be insane. That's exactly what I felt. I wonder if my son knows how terrifying her ideas are. The moment I opened my mouth to question her, my grandson interrupted me. I'm sorry, I'm okay, really. Grandma, can you please go eat with Mom and enjoy your meal? Please? He pleaded in a soft voice, and my grandson grabbed the back of my clothes. I could feel his hand trembling through my back, and I chose to swallow the words I was about to say. Grandma, it's normal for me to eat here, so please don't worry about it, really. Normal? What do you mean by normal? Come on, Aiden says so. Let's go over there, shall we, Mary? Saying so, my son's wife forcibly took me to the living room. If I stir things up any further, my grandson might be harmed. If that's why he intervened earlier to prevent that. I sensed a crisis for my grandson and pondered desperately for a solution. Come on, let's cheer up and eat. Today we have premium beef steak, she said, cheerfully chewing on the delicious-looking meat. But I couldn't eat at all, and I excused myself by saying I had a light dinner before coming here. After finishing the meal, I was planning to stay overnight and was guided to the bathroom. Taking the opportunity, I walked around the house again, looking for my grandson. I have to save Aiden. From the situation since I came to this house and my grandson's condition, I sensed that my son's wife was doing something terrible to him. But how to save him? I was thinking of taking my grandson and going to my sister's place, but I couldn't find him anywhere. He was not in the rooms, bathroom. Where had he disappeared to? Could it be that he's been locked in my son's wife's room? Just then, I spotted the garage in the yard. My grandson's shoes were lying there. Could it be? I quickly changed into the yard sandals and rushed to the garage entrance. Who? The garage entrance was not locked, and I was able to enter smoothly. There, I found my grandson, trying to fall asleep. Aiden? What are you doing here? What on earth happened? I rushed to my grandson, who was huddled in the corner of the garage, looking cold and frightened, wrapped in a blanket. My grandson looked up at me trembling, as if frightened by my approach. Grandma, it's okay. It happens all the time. Please don't worry about it. That's right. It's his punishment for always being a nuisance. What? Emma was suddenly standing at the entrance to the garage, smiling as she looked at my grandson and me. Mom! Mary, you really do love meddling, don't you? Even though Aiden was trying to protect you. Emma, you've been cruel to Aiden after all. Cruel? What are you talking about? I'm just teaching Aiden the same way I was raised. If you do something wrong, it's natural to be punished, right? Neglect. That word perfectly summed up the family environment, and I was almost at a loss for words. My son's wife was apparently raised in a harsh environment as a child, and what she was doing to my grandson seemed to be a part of the discipline she had received herself. But I couldn't accept that kind of parenting, and I spontaneously voiced my opinion. Punishment? This? What did Aiden do? You don't understand how I feel. I love Aiden and want him to be with me forever. But he abandoned me, trying to leave the house to go to college. It's all because he went to such a place. That's why he changed. My grandson was utterly terrified by his mother's hysterical outburst. I learned later that because she had overcome the challenges of raising a child alone, she seemed to have developed an abnormal attachment to my son. So, you've confined Aiden? You knew, didn't you? That's right, to keep Aiden from leaving me. So, I made him quit college. It was all to satisfy her own desires. I couldn't comprehend her talking about such terrifying thoughts so casually. The situation was more than just frightening. My grandson had been living in fear of that twisted love, suffering for a whole year. Thinking of his terror, I trembled with rage and couldn't help but glare at her. Since Mary knows the truth now, I can't let you go home, can I? With those words, my son's wife, wearing a sinister smile, began to slowly close the garage door. We're going to be trapped! I realized it too late, and by the time I started to move, it was already too late. After a loud metallic clang, I heard the sound of a clock. I'll think about what to do with Mary overnight. For today, you two, Aiden and you, will just have to sleep in the garage and reflect on things. My son's wife seemed relieved that she had locked me and my grandson in, and I could hear her walking away from the scene. In the silent garage, it was my grandson who spoke first. Why? Huh? Why did you come looking for me? If you had just left me alone. I couldn't bear to watch my grandson crying out like that, trembling with guilt and fear. Thinking from his perspective, this life had been so hard and painful for him. Overwhelmed by unbearable emotions, I gently embraced him. Don't talk nonsense, dear. Where is there an old woman who would abandon her precious grandson? Precious? Yes, dear. It's no exaggeration to say that my life was saved because you were born. Just before my grandson was born, I was struck with the grave illness of cancer. My body had dramatically withered away, and the disease had spread to various places. It was severe. Honestly, I thought it might be the end of my life. I was in such a state that I had prepared myself for it. During that time, Emma was in a dangerous situation during childbirth for both mother and child. It was such a difficult delivery that they were issuing warnings. But my grandson was born. At the time of his birth, I expressed profound gratitude to my son's wife, and although I had been ready for the end of my life, my grandson gave me the courage and hope to live. So you see, I decided that I must protect you. It's because of your resilience, which saved my life, that I have been able to live this long. My grandson listened quietly to my gentle words. And then perhaps, overwhelmed by a wave of both pain and joy, he began to cry quietly, embracing me in return. I really want to run away. I want to leave here and go somewhere Mom isn't. I'm scared of Mom. If I voice any opinion, she starts screaming like she's a different person. If I didn't listen to her, I'd be locked in this garage since I was little. Even if I escaped, she would file a missing person report and I'd be caught right away. There's no escape. I had no idea that my son's wife's behavior was tormenting my grandson like this. From what he told me, all his friends were taken away by my son's wife, and there was no one to help him. It seemed he had given up hope of escaping from my son's wife. Now I'm stuck with this weak body. I'm really pathetic, aren't I? I found it painful to see my grandson's forced smile. I could feel my body trembling with anger. Let's run away, Aiden. Huh? I will protect you no matter what. I will rescue you from here, so just wait. I said this and pulled out my mobile phone from my pocket, calling someone. Hello? Mary? What's going on? The person on the other end was my sister, and I explained the whole situation to her. Rather than getting angry, my sister thought of a way to help us first. First of all, make sure to keep each other warm so you don't get cold. Oliver's workplace is that place, right? With those words, my sister asked me for the address of my son's workplace. I was certain, but I wondered what she was planning to do, and was about to ask when she cut me off, anticipating my question. We need to teach her a lesson. I'll make her understand that her twisted love is wrong. Just wait, both of you. I'll come and rescue you soon. My sister told me this unilaterally, then hung up the phone, and we spent some time just like that. It was January, in the dead of winter. Since we were in the mountains, the temperature had dropped even further. The cold was so severe that even huddled together, my grandson and I couldn't bear it. Our words dwindled, and I felt like I might lose consciousness. Just as I was about to close my eyes with those thoughts, something happened. It sounded like a fire, or some sort of accident nearby. There was a loud noise of ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars. The sound brought me back to my senses. But something about it seemed off. It was very close, and it sounded as if they had stopped right in front of our house, perhaps. Just as I thought that, I heard the scream of my son's wife. Hey, you guys! What's going on? Over here! Quickly! Break the garage lock! Incredibly, I even began to hear my son's voice from outside. Help had arrived. With that thought, I stood up and began pounding on the garage with all my strength. I'm here! Someone please help! Save Aiden! Save my grandson! Following my cry, my grandson also began to raise his voice, calling for help. We're opening it now! Please stand back! Because the paramedics shouted that, my grandson and I moved away from the entrance. The sound of the lock being broken with machinery echoed, and the moment it was destroyed, the entrance burst open with force. Are both of you okay? Dad? My son, his face a mix of panic and anxiety, appeared and hugged his son as if he were jumping on him. Seeing his father's face, my grandson seemed relieved and embraced his father, crying. Hey, what are you doing? You think this is allowed? Doing something like this without permission? Emma, unable to comprehend the situation, screamed and ranted, claiming their actions were unreasonable, but not a single adult seemed intimidated by her. Everyone glared at her, and then my sister appeared, confronting my son's wife. Don't talk nonsense! Do you even realize what you've done? My sister yelled at my son's wife in a voice louder than I'd ever heard before. We were all taken aback by her voice, but the one who was even more startled was my son's wife. You were about to do something irreversible! Don't you understand how dangerous that was? My sister yelled at my son's wife, her anger like that of a real mother. But my son's wife raised her voice to confront her. In the first place, if Mary hadn't meddled, none of this would have happened. It's not my fault, it's all Mary's fault. I'm not in the wrong. Those words of my son's wife screaming that she was not at fault made me furious, and I lost my temper. If I hadn't noticed this today, you would have continued to believe Aiden was yours, and would have kept taking away his freedom. But that's because Aiden doesn't understand my feelings. Don't force your selfish thoughts on a child. I rebuked my son's wife, who was still trying to resist, scolding her so sharply that I left no room for rebuttal. You unilaterally demand love in return, and don't even try to listen to the child's opinions. You have no right to call yourself a parent. What did you say? Interrupting Emma's attempt to argue, a police officer stepped in front of her. Emma, you are being detained on suspicion of kidnapping. What? Hey, wait a minute. Hold on. If you resist, the charges will become more serious. At the police officer's words, a breathless Emma quieted down and was then taken away. Afterward, my grandson and I went to the hospital for an examination. He had been locked in a freezing garage. There were no visible abnormalities. He underwent a thorough examination, but nothing unusual was found. However, he was hospitalized to monitor his condition for the day. Dorothy, thank you for coming to help. You should thank Oliver. Thanks to him quickly arranging everything, we were able to rescue him. I'm really sorry. It's my fault for not looking after the house properly. Oliver, that's not true. You were working hard to protect our home. But maybe this happened because I left everything to Emma, using work as an excuse. I'm also to blame. I spoke gently to my son, who felt responsible. Then, from now on, you must protect Aiden. Surely Emma will come to take Aiden back. Yeah, I think so too. We have to make sure that he never falls into her hands again. That's true, but what should we do? I have an idea. When I proposed this to my son and sister, they both agreed. Time passed and the day came when Emma was released. As we were prepared for her to contact us, sure enough, Oliver's mobile phone rang. Wait, what's going on here? The first thing out of her mouth was neither an apology nor a complaint, but a voice almost like a shout. Both my sister and I, who were listening to the call, sighed at her expected reaction. What's the matter? The house! It's gone, isn't it? Yeah, it's gone. We don't need a house to live with you anymore. What? What do you mean? Explain yourself! Just being released and faced with an incomprehensible situation, she was speaking with a voice filled with anger and desperation. In fact, after that, we all, including my grandson, had discussed it and sold the house, leaving it a vacant lot. Since I had originally been the owner of the house, selling it was easy. My son and grandson were now living on entirely different land, and after this phone call, the mobile phone was to be disconnected, and arrangements were made to talk to Emma through a lawyer. There's no way we can go on with you, and Aiden has finally settled down. Don't try to interfere with our family anymore. What are you talking about? Aiden is my precious son. Stop it. The grandson, who had been listening to the call, quietly spoke up at her shouting. Aiden? Where are you? Mom will come and get you. Just wait. I'll come and take you back right away. You're creepy. In response to Emma's words, the grandson spoke out in an angry tone. Emma, surprised at his words, showed a look of confusion. Aiden? What on earth are you saying? I've put up with it for so long. I'm finally living freely with Dad and the others, so don't get in our way. I never want to see your face again. The grandson, who had said that, was excited, catching his breath with his shoulders. I placed my hand on his shoulder and gently soothed him by patting it several times. We are getting a divorce. Don't ever show yourself in front of us again. My son, who had said this, hung up the phone unilaterally and immediately set his phone to reject calls from Emma's number. We also made sure that no contact could reach the grandson's mobile phone, leaving the rest to the lawyer. After that, the divorce from Emma was successfully finalized. Thanks to a restraining order, the grandson is enjoying peaceful days. Emma is said to be attending therapy, unable to let go of her love for her son. She's not working and lives on benefits from the government, or so I heard through the grapevine. Since then, my grandson has stopped shutting himself in the house and is now studying hard with the ambition to attend medical school. I want to become someone who can help others too. Inspired by the father and rescue team that saved him, he's been saying this and striving every day. My sister and I still run the candy store, playing with little children every day. For our grandchildren who have regained a peaceful life, and for the children yet to be born who we hope to welcome into our lives, we cannot give up on living just yet.
Hey, how are we going to scam a free ride today?
My husband had invited me to a fancy steak dinner, and that's when we were out enjoying our meal. While I was in the restroom, I happened to overhear a conversation from my eldest son and his wife. It seemed impossible that they would be at this restaurant, and I reached for the door to ask how they got in. Listening to their conversation, I was speechless. If we do this, you won't be able to see your son and his wife for a while. I promptly reported my son and daughter-in-law's conversation to my husband and the restaurant staff, and we decided to carry out a plan. The wife of the proprietor of the steakhouse gave us the final confirmation, and my husband and I nodded firmly. No problem. If you can cooperate, we'd be very grateful. And so, our retaliation against our eldest son and his wife began. My name is Kenya Robertson. My husband Edward and I are an 80-year-old couple enjoying our leisurely lives and retirement. We both enjoy walking, our common hobby. Sometimes I spend the day alone while my husband enjoys painting with friends or chatting with the proprietor of my favorite cafe. Our time was relaxed and carefree. We have a son. His name is Osmond. He must be around 50 now. He's happily married to Nikita, and they live in harmony. His wife is a homemaker, and they didn't have children.
If we have kids, we'll lose our time together. I still want to enjoy my leisurely time with her.
Saying this, the son embraced his wife's shoulders. He was completely smitten with her, as if she were his destined partner. At first, we found their affection endearing, and even understood their desire for time together. But then, my husband and I froze at the daughter-in-law's next words.
Why not use adoption if we want a child? I don't want to endure the pain of childbirth.
I was disillusioned by the daughter-in-law's laughing words. I couldn't understand the son's nerves. Laughing along, these two might not be sane. From that point on, we didn't have a close relationship with the son and his wife. I felt like if I got involved anymore, it might strain our relationship. But the slightly distant way we treated each other worked well, and there was never any friction due to differing values or communication challenges. There were no problems in daily life either, and I thought time would continue to flow peacefully. It was during one of these carefree moments that I almost forgot about the whole incident. The problem arose when I went shopping at the supermarket. I felt several eyes on me, and turning around, I noticed several neighbors looking at me and whispering, "Hello, everyone. Out shopping?" Curious about what was going on, I spoke up, but was met with an awkward greeting. In a word, I was being avoided. It was an attitude so blatant that I could feel it instinctively, and it made me question what was happening. Why? The answer was simple. I had just had tea with those very people yesterday. Who would have thought that something like this would happen so suddenly? I wondered if I had done something wrong and stood frozen in place for a while. Suddenly, a man's angry voice echoed through the store from the checkout.
What are you going to do to take responsibility? I'm asking you.
The loud yelling man made my shoulders jump, and everyone's gaze turned towards him. The store had been filled with lively conversation just a moment ago, but it now fell silent, an eerie change. The only sounds were the continued shouting of the man and the apologies of the supermarket clerk.
We'll replace it right away. Please wait a moment. I don't want the item, you fool. Don't you get that? Just give me a discount.
I turned towards the register, astonished at the man's absurd words, and then, unable to believe who I saw, I momentarily refused to accept reality. Osmond? To my surprise, the person yelling was my eldest son. As soon as I saw him, I rushed over to him. My eldest son noticed me and turned around, greeting me with a calm smile.
Oh, Mom, out shopping?
Despite his earlier yelling, he showed me a friendly smile. I've always thought of him as kind to family and strict with others, but now it seemed he had lost all common sense. I felt that way. It's not about shopping. What are you doing? Yelling like a fool and complaining.
Huh? What do you mean, fool? There was a bug in the cabbage here. I almost ate it without noticing. Complaining is natural, isn't it?
My son must have realized I wasn't just calling out to him but trying to intervene. He immediately changed his attitude, explaining the situation to me in a hostile, quarrelsome tone. His behavior was so domineering that I was bewildered that this was my real son. What's the big deal about 1 or 2 bugs? You could have had it replaced. Why have you been yelling so loudly? Aren't you embarrassed?
Why do I have to be the one to get angry? It's the supermarket's fault, isn't it? They say they'll replace it, but just looking at that cabbage made me feel nauseous from shock. It's not like replacing it solves anything. The more I tried to stop him, the more my eldest son's words escalated. Contrary to me, who felt so embarrassed that my body trembled under the piercing, painful stares from those around us, my eldest son continued to yell as if he wanted to draw even more attention to himself. It must have been a strategy to make a big fuss and put pressure on the store. If this goes on any further, we might get into trouble with the police. Thinking this, I handed the cabbage to the supermarket clerk for now, also leaving my empty shopping basket,
and forcibly dragged my eldest son out of the supermarket.
Mom, what are you doing?
What are you doing is my line. Making such a big fuss over one cabbage. What's wrong with you? Dragging my eldest son outside was fine, but calming his angry state was virtually impossible. And I, too, was about to explode with anger at how shameful it was that my son had grown up this way. A full-grown adult arguing loudly in front of the supermarket. Naturally, I sensed that the surrounding stares were gathering, but my anger did not subside, and the argument with my eldest son continued. What's the big deal about a bug on the cabbage? It's proof that it's delicious, isn't it?
Are you out of your mind? If so, Mom, you can eat cabbage with bugs on it every day. What's the point of continuing this trivial argument forever?
Whether she sensed the commotion or was waiting in the car, my eldest son's wife appeared from his car. Seeing her, my eldest son and I stopped our argument, and he hurried over to her, looking very disheveled.
I'm sorry, Nikita. Was I late?
This was the first time I felt repulsed by my irresolute eldest son, who was attracted to his wife. Until now, I hadn't thought anything of it, but my opinion of my eldest son plummeted all at once because of his earlier behavior.
You're more than late. Did you get the money properly?
For some reason, my eldest son's wife was intimidating. I felt a discomfort I hadn't noticed when I met her before.
No, Mom interfered, so...
Huh? Don't tell me you missed getting it. She looked down on my eldest son as if he were a servant, and her tone was rough. I was at a loss for words at her actions, which were unthinkable for a woman.
I'm sorry. I'll go now and try again. We don't need it. How long are you planning to make us wait? I'm sorry.
Against his harsh wife, my eldest son looked as small as a cat whose neck was grasped. I couldn't find the words to speak. Staring at the two of them in a dazed manner, the wife turned her gaze to me. Mother-in-law, it's been a while. It seems you've been meddling unnecessarily. Her tone was cold as she spoke to me, and I felt a sense of irritation in her words. Unable to understand what she meant, I instinctively asked her again. This seemed to further irritate her, and she turned a cold, disdainful gaze at me, looking down on me.
Next time, if you could please not interfere with what we're doing, that would be good.
Inconvenient? Could that complaint be from that child earlier? As I was about to finish, I felt the stifling pressure from my eldest son's wife, forcing me to stop speaking. I felt a terror as though I was being stared down by a wild beast, and I choked on my words.
I told you, didn't I? Never interfere. I won't be responsible for what happens later.
With those threatening words, she took my eldest son, who had bowed his head slightly, and left the scene. Left behind, I could only stand alone in the parking lot watching my eldest son's car leave. Could it be those kids made that complaint on purpose? As they sped away, I reflected on the last conversation I had with my eldest son's wife. It's not a trivial matter. Livelihoods are at stake. Could it mean they are purposely complaining to swindle money? And the way she spoke and her attitude. What was she really? My thoughts were interrupted when I found out the answer the next day. The next day after the quarrel with my eldest son and his wife, a good neighbor came to visit our house. She was quite frantic. "What's wrong?" So panicky.
Robertson, it's terrible. Your daughter-in-law got into a fight with my husband. The neighbor was the wife of the proprietor of my favorite cafe. I had been avoiding the neighbors I used to run into at the supermarket, but it seems that my eldest son and his wife showed up there. And just like yesterday, they caused a scene, making the proprietor of my favorite cafe furious. My eldest son filmed the whole scene, and his wife instigated the proprietor of my favorite cafe, creating a hostile atmosphere. I hurriedly called my husband, and together with the neighbor's wife, we headed to her store.
You brought Robertson here.
Oh, the Robertson brothers. What's going on with your son and his wife? They're wrecking the place and causing trouble.
As we had a relationship with the proprietor of my favorite cafe, we apologized first and foremost. I am truly sorry. We will take them back right away.
Here you are again.
Next to her, my eldest son clicked his tongue and his wife let out words of annoyance. I felt anger rising, but now the most important thing was to calm the situation.
You're a part of the family with mother-in-law, aren't you? It's rude to mother-in-law.
Even in this situation, the proprietor of my favorite cafe was thinking of us. I was touched by this, but it seemed to irritate my daughter-in-law.
I married Osmond and I don't care about anything else. More importantly, how dare you serve such awful food to your customers? What? You're still talking back. You...
My husband restrained the proprietor of my favorite cafe as he was about to lash out, and he deeply apologized on the spot.
We're truly sorry. We will come back to apologize for this mistaken behavior. Other customers are here. Please calm down for now.
My husband conveyed the words of apology with a sincere attitude. Seeing this, the blood in the proprietor of my favorite cafe's face subsided, and for now, he told us to take my eldest son and his wife back without paying. Then, my husband and I silently took them home and led them to the living room. No sooner had the eldest daughter-in-law sat on the couch than she sighed wearily. The eldest son, seeing her like this, seemed flustered and eager to please her.
Do you even realize what you've done?
It was her husband who spoke these words, his face expressionless but his tone tinged with anger. Even I, who have been married to him for many years, had never seen him like this before. He looked so frightening that I shivered involuntarily.
What do you mean? I just complained about the taste and I simply told them I didn't want to pay for such horrible food.
But the daughter-in-law showed no signs of being intimidated. On the contrary, she glared back, insisting she was right.
What you two are doing is a gross violation of common decency. The restaurant is run by our dear friends who have always been there for us. So what? It has nothing to do with us.
The husband's anger towards his unresponsive daughter-in-law continued to grow. I knew it wasn't right to give in to anger. With that thought, I intervened in their conversation. Nikita, you had our son do the same thing at the supermarket yesterday, didn't you? Are you deliberately making complaints to save money? I voiced my suspicion. Whether it was yesterday or today, what they were doing was clearly out of line. They were harassing people to get something for free. There seemed to be no other explanation for their excessive behavior. Upon hearing this, the daughter-in-law burst into laughter. So much so that tears streamed down her face. My husband and I were taken aback.
Mother-in-law, you're smarter than I thought. Who wouldn't want to eat cheaper if they could?
Even though her scheme had been uncovered, she kept laughing as if there was nothing wrong. She's insane. I couldn't help but think that. And my husband and I were left speechless.
Eating food without trying to save money is just silly. If there's a way to make it cheaper, why doesn't everyone do it? I just don't understand.
You are in your right mind, aren't you? Don't you realize this is a crime?
Crime? Crime, you say? But people rarely call the police because they don't want to ruin their reputation. Most of the time, they give in to our demands to settle things peacefully.
You're crazy. Your way of thinking is not sane. Even my normally silent husband was taken aback by her words. And yet, she continued speaking, almost as if mocking him.
Yes, maybe I am crazy, but I've been involved in shady activities since I was young, so it doesn't bother me anymore.
At this point, I was revealed that she had been a female leader of an outlaw motorcycle gang. She began to tell her life story.
I grew up in an institution without knowing my parents. Before I knew it, I was part of a criminal organization. This lifestyle was normal for me, so I never thought it was wrong.
She spoke nonchalantly, and the eldest son seemed to adore her as if worshipping her.
I love strong-willed women like Nikita. I'll do anything Nikita wants.
Osmond, you... The eldest son speaks in despair, captivated by daughter-in-law. He feels utterly regretful, unable to shake off the shame that his child has grown into such an adult.
So if you persist any further, even if you're my mother-in-law and her allies, I won't hesitate. This is my final warning. Understand?
With those words, my eldest son's wife stood up and he followed her out the door. I tried to stop them, insisting the conversation wasn't over, but my words didn't reach them. My husband and I stood dumbfounded, watching their backs as they left. After that, we tried to contact our eldest son and his wife by phone and visiting their house, but they were coldly dismissed and ignored. Our calls were blocked and we found ourselves alienated from them. From that moment, people in our small town started looking at us differently. Rumors spread quickly here, and being ignored became the norm. If I saw people whispering on the street, I would feel they were talking about me, and I felt cornered. I also went to apologize to the cafe we had troubled, but was asked not to come while we were still associated with our son and his wife, and I was driven out. That night, I was overwhelmed by regret and cried myself to sleep. I sobbed quietly, feeling so wretched that I wished I could disappear. My mental health declined and I was bedridden for days. I was afraid to go out, and my husband took care of all the household chores. Then one day, my husband suggested we go out to change our mood. The proprietor of the steakhouse run by my husband's friend says,
"Please bring your wife with you."
The proprietor of the steakhouse run by my husband's friend is an exclusive club. My husband, who had shared our situation, received an invitation from them. "You've been feeling down. It must be hard. Let's eat something delicious and cheer up." His gentle touch on my back was so loving. I was reminded once again how glad I was to have married him, and I accepted his dinner invitation. I had barely eaten over the past few days and my face was gaunt. I tried to cover it with makeup, but my husband saw through it and told me not to force a smile. With a sense of resignation, we headed to the restaurant. As soon as we arrived, the proprietor of the steakhouse and his wife welcomed us.
Welcome. We've been expecting you.
It's been a while.
Thank you for taking care of us today.
Madam, please relax. Our young staff makes an exquisite steak dinner. The gentle demeanor of the proprietor's wife and the robust presence of the proprietor of the steakhouse were reassuring. I smiled weakly and nodded at their words, noticing my frailty. The wife took my hand and guided me through the immaculately cleaned restaurant, filled with cleanliness.
Welcome. We've been waiting for you.
The one who greeted us with those words was the head chef of the steakhouse. His energy seemed to lift my downtrodden spirit, and I felt almost overwhelmed by his zeal.
Today I'm going to put extra effort into making a delicious steak for you.
The cuisine at the steakhouse is truly exquisite. Please make yourself at home and enjoy. The person who greeted us with a smile was the female waitstaff at the steakhouse. Her gentle smile healed my heart, and the smile naturally returned to my face. As I was being treated to a delicious steak, I almost forgot about my eldest son and his wife when...
Hey, how are we going to scam money today?
While on my way to the restroom, I heard a familiar voice from a private room.
It's Dad's friend's restaurant, right? It might be risky here. What are you scared of? This place is no different from the other. Well, yeah, but... You... Since when did you become such a lame man?
When I see a man without guts, it makes me sick. From the way they spoke and their voice tone, I immediately knew it was my eldest son and his wife in that room. How did they get into this restaurant? As I reached to open the door to the room to ask them, I felt the blood drain from my face as I overheard their conversation. And then, I nearly collapsed on the spot.
Ma'am, are you feeling ill?
The head chef of the steakhouse was there to describe the food. I didn't have the time to explain the situation, and I just told him that I wanted to get back to my room. But I was on the verge of collapsing, and walking properly was difficult. Upon telling him this, the head chef of the steakhouse reluctantly made a request.
I'm sorry. It might not be appropriate since you're a lady, but...
Saying it was an emergency, he picked me up and carried me to my room. When he hurriedly brought me to the room, my husband, the wife, and the proprietor of the steakhouse were all there. The wife rushed to my side, surprised and breathless, as the head chef of the steakhouse appeared with me. The head chef of the steakhouse sat me down in a chair and entered the room, ensuring that no one else would overhear.
What happened? Are you okay?
I'm fine. But you... It's a disaster. Osmond and the others.
Osmond and the others? What's going on?
My husband, seeing my pale face, calmly offered me a cup of tea. After sipping the tea and taking a deep breath to calm my heart, I explained the conversation I had overheard earlier.
Come to think of it, a couple by the name of Robertson did come to the restaurant today. What?
I recalled that we had brought Osmond and the others to this restaurant when they got married. At that time, the proprietor of the steakhouse had made a membership card for them since they were our children. So that's how they were able to dine here.
I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Why are you apologizing, proprietor of the steakhouse? We are the ones who should be sorry.
More importantly, what should we do? It won't be good if they cause a scene in the restaurant. As everyone was racking their brains over the situation, the head chef of the steakhouse made a suggestion.
How about this?
We couldn't help but feel hesitant upon hearing his suggestion. But that would mean we'd be putting the head chef of the steakhouse in a difficult position.
Don't worry about it. If I can help you ladies, this is a simple thing to do.
The head chef of the steakhouse laughed manly with a gah-ha-ha, and both my husband and I couldn't help but smile back, lowering our brows. But if you do this, you won't be able to see your son and daughter-in-law for a while. With a stern look in her eyes, the wife made sure we were committed to our decision. My husband and I looked at each other and nodded slightly.
We don't mind. If you can help, we would like to ask for your assistance. Are you sure about this? Yes. We can't stop our children on our own. Please, we need your help.
When the proprietor of the steakhouse confirmed again, my husband and I both thanked him politely, and so our counterattack against our eldest son and his wife began.
Hey, call the manager!
As expected, the eldest son's wife started screaming in the restaurant, and customers from private rooms began to peek out, wondering what was happening.
I am the head chef of the steakhouse, but...
The head chef of the steakhouse rushed over and asked the eldest son and his wife what was wrong.
There was a hair in the soup. How are you going to make up for this rudeness? We've paid good money, so take responsibility.
As always, the eldest son's wife started to complain. The other customers began to murmur, and worried voices could be heard from the staff.
A hair, you say?
But the head chef of the steakhouse did not waver and responded firmly. Upon inspecting the soup with the hair, he seemed to notice something strange.
This hair doesn't belong to any of our employees.
The head chef's cool analysis made the eldest son and his wife look at him in shock. The words piqued the interest of the other customers, and everyone in the restaurant focused on the exchange between the eldest son and his wife and the head chef of the steakhouse. What basis do you have for saying that?
We don't have any staff with dyed hair, and we don't have any female staff with such long hair.
What did you say? The eldest son's wife was taken aback by the head chef's calm observation, but now the eldest son began to complain, following his wife.
Are you accusing us, the customers? Of course not. But if this was intentionally put in by the customer, that would be a serious problem, wouldn't it?
Prove that we put it there before you talk like that. If the evidence is found, may I then speak so boldly? The wife, who had been listening, now stepped forward, followed by the appearance of the proprietor of the steakhouse. The unwavering attitude of everyone made the eldest son and his wife look around in bewilderment.
What you are doing is a crime, you know. It would be wise to know your place before making a bigger fuss, don't you think?
What's your problem? Is this how you treat customers at an upscale restaurant?
You're not customers or anything else for that matter.
The eldest son's couple, refusing to back down, now faced a verbal volley from my husband. Hearing a familiar voice, the two of them turned towards my husband and me, their faces reflecting confusion.
You again? Why are you here?
That's what we should be saying.
This is our dear friend's restaurant. Stop embarrassing yourselves with this disgraceful behavior.
Disgraceful behavior? There was hair in our food. This is a legitimate complaint, and it's absurd for you to criticize us for it. We know that you deliberately put the hair in there." As I said this, I pointed to the ceiling. There was a black circular device mounted there.
What's that supposed to be?
Don't you know? That's a security camera.
So what about it?
I looked down on the ignorant eldest daughter-in-law, and she openly showed her anger. She glared at me, displaying a defiant attitude, yet still seemed clueless about the camera. The eldest son was the first to understand the situation.
Hey, is that... What? Why are you looking so pale all of a sudden?
Husband seemed to have figured out what it means that there's a security camera.
So? What?
The eldest daughter-in-law's disgust was palpable in the frustrating exchange. Seeing is believing. My husband, thinking it would be faster to show than tell, opened the room door and pointed to the ceiling. There, a security camera had been installed.
That camera is the type that can view in all directions. 360 degrees, right?
Even the eldest daughter-in-law seemed to get it now, her mouth gaping like a goldfish. Her face gradually turned pale.
You can get that hair DNA tested or whatever you like. We're prepared to fight this to the very end.
The proprietor of the steakhouse started threatening the two with a broad smile on his face. Then, the sound of sirens came from outside the restaurant.
What?
"Ah, looks like your ride's here."
Our ride? What are you talking about?
The eldest daughter-in-law, her face pale, responded to my words. I spoke coldly, with a full-faced smile. "It's time for us to part ways for now."
What do you mean?
A police officer appeared in front of the bewildered couple. He began to surround them, asking for details.
Are you the ones who interfered with this business and are trying to push extortion?
Business interference? What? These people were trying to make false claims at this restaurant, hoping to get a free meal. I interrupted the eldest son's attempt at an excuse, explaining the situation to the police officer. When the eldest son and his wife heard this, they resisted. However, the police officer warned them.
If you say anything more, you'll only make your crime worse.
They instantly calmed down.
At any rate, we'll hear the details at the station. Shall we go together?
We didn't do anything wrong. Give it up. I've already explained the situation to the police officers. Everything you tried to do to frame this shop with your false testimony. You'll also tell them about all the dirty tricks you've pulled up until now. They'll hear everything.
That's right. We'll listen to your story for as long as it takes. Shall we go?
The smiling face of the police officer seemed terrifying even as he smiled. Even the hot-tempered daughter-in-law had no choice but to calm down.
We'll take them now.
Thank you very much. My husband and I thanked the police officer, who gave a slight bow, and when we saw the eldest son and his wife being taken away, a big round of applause erupted inside the restaurant.
That was awesome! Nice performance, head chef of the steakhouse.
I thought we were going to get caught and I panicked. My husband and I could only express our gratitude for the warmth of the regular customers, laughing as they spoke. Head chef of the steakhouse, the wife, the proprietor of the steakhouse. Thank you very much.
No, if it means that the Robertson couple can rest easy, we're more than happy. But it really did turn out just like the head chef of the steakhouse said. I can usually guess what that type of person will do.
I and my husband could only look up in admiration at the head chef of the steakhouse, laughing as he spoke. At that time, the head chef had proposed a plan to provoke the eldest son and his wife.
Our employee has brown hair, And while the camera is a surveillance camera, it doesn't see everything. I was worried about what would happen if they knew. We were leaving it to chance, but I'm glad we were able to handle it.
All thanks to the wife, the proprietor of the steakhouse, and everyone's cooperation. Thank you very much. We were all greeted with warm voices inside the restaurant. The staff explained the situation to the customers, and they all sided with us. If something had happened and the eldest son and his wife had started rampaging, everyone would have acted like actors to help us.
Come on, let's resume our enjoyable meal. Today, we'll provide a service from the shop.
Everyone rejoiced at the thoughtful consideration of the proprietor of the steakhouse, and we all had a great time. After that, the eldest son and his wife were sued by the restaurant and faced a large amount of compensation. It also went to court, and they were likely to receive a prison sentence. Furthermore, it was revealed that they had been fighting with the proprietor of my favorite cafe and had posted a video on social media. They were also sued from that side, and their bad reputation spread so that no one in the town didn't know about the eldest son and his wife. Naturally, it became difficult for them to live in the town, and they had to leave as if fleeing. My husband and I thought about what we could do to repay the proprietor of the steakhouse, and as a result of exploring various options, we decided to promote the two eateries using social media. We got help from a web-savvy acquaintance, and both places thrived thanks to our efforts. We managed to rebuild a good relationship with our neighbors, and now we can once again go for tea as a couple. After cutting ties with our eldest son and his wife, my husband and I are now over 80 years old, living healthily. We're so happy every day that we don't even have any interest in what has become of our eldest son and his wife. This incident made us painfully aware, once again, that seeking easy gains will be punished.
Your lunch looks like pig slop. With those words, my boss belittled the lunch that my husband and daughter had lovingly made for me. I put up with her insults for a long time, but this time I couldn't hold back, and I finally stood up to her. Her harassment escalated after I stood up to her. Then tragedy struck when my husband was in an accident, and our life was turned upside down. Worn down in body and spirit, I finally quit my job. Fast forward a few years. Why do you always have it so good? My old boss said to me when we met again. My name is Remy. I live with my husband James and our 5-year-old daughter Mabel. Today's lunch looks delicious. Thanks, Mom. You're welcome. I'll probably be late from work today, so enjoy your time with Dad. Please pick up Mabel from the childcare center. Okay. This is a typical morning scene in our household. I'm always rushed and bustling about, yet my husband and Mabel watch over me with smiles, never uttering a single complaint. I work in caregiving. It's a shift job with early and late hours, and overtime is common due to staff shortages. The work can be physically demanding, but I'm proud of what I do. It's my family's support that has enabled me to continue. Good morning. I arrive at work 5 minutes before start time. Remy, your hair's a mess. You take care of your family in the morning and then work full-time? You're truly amazing. My single colleague always praises me when I rush into the workplace. Blessed with good colleagues, I've been working hard, but enjoying my job. However, there's one person at my workplace who doesn't think well of me. Remy, you're cutting it close again today. You have a lot to do, so please come earlier and prepare. I'm sorry. The one who always finds something to complain about me is my female boss, Sissy, a veteran in this office. She's been here since I joined. From the beginning, I sensed she was harsh, but at first, she never said anything personal. If I asked her about work, she taught me well, and honestly, I relied on her in some ways. But since I returned from maternity leave, Sissy's attitude towards me has become harder. I didn't know why, but since others were also treated harshly by Sissy, I thought it was just her preference, and tried my best not to get on her bad side. One morning, I woke up to find that my husband and Mabel, usually sleeping beside me, were not in bed. Seeing the sunlight coming through the curtains, I was startled and looked at the clock. The clock hands were pointing at 7 o'clock. Oh no, I have to make lunch! I ran frantically to the kitchen. Good morning, Mom! I heard Mabel's cute voice from the kitchen. Sorry, I overslept! You must be tired from working late, so we let you sleep, just for a little while. We don't need lunch today, Mabel and I, so it's okay. All right, I went to sleep last night without even looking at the schedule for today. Today, Mabel had lunch at school, and my husband was out, so no lunches were needed. My husband and Mabel seemed to have refrained from setting the alarm, being considerate of my accumulated fatigue. Mom, eat this! We made it together. Mabel said this, and she and my husband smiled at each other. In Mabel's hand was my lunchbox. It was packed with sandwiches filled with boiled eggs, ham, cheese, and chicken, along with vegetable sticks and fruits. You two made this for me? I was so surprised that my voice cracked. Recently interested in cooking, Mabel often helps prepare meals, but she's only 5 years old. She can't use the stove or knife without me watching. On the other hand, my husband usually only makes boiled eggs. These two seem to have made lunch for me. I felt like crying. Mabel, Dad, thank you so much. My feelings were so overwhelming that words could not convey them, and I hugged them both. Every time I eat the lunch you make, Mom, I get so energized. Today, eat this lunch and get energized too. Mabel's words made my husband smile too. How happy I am. Thanks to them, my fatigue was completely gone, and I headed to work feeling light and happy. Then came the long-awaited lunch break. When I opened my lunchbox, a natural smile spread across my face. Sandwiches with finger marks, uneven vegetable sticks, slightly crushed fruits. Everything was adorable. I could see the two of them getting up early in the morning and working hard in the kitchen. Every bite made me feel energized. What are you so happy about? I suddenly glanced at the side, and there stood Sissy. Sissy peered into my lunchbox. Wow, that looks disgusting. Your lunch looks like pig food. Sissy said, laughing. What? Pig food? Normally, I would silently endure Sissy's insults without responding, but I just couldn't stand her insulting my precious family. I couldn't forgive her for calling the food that my husband and daughter worked hard to make for me pig food. Enough is enough! I slammed the desk and yelled. The break room fell silent. Sissy was momentarily taken aback by my outburst, but quickly glared back. It's the truth. You shouldn't defy your boss like that. You won't get away with it. With that, Sissy stomped away, her footsteps echoing. My blissful time was ruined. I closed my eyes to calm my anger. It's okay. I have my husband and Mabel. Thank you for the meal. I had finished the lovingly prepared lunchbox, and I felt recharged with energy and courage. I'll do my best this afternoon. As I returned to my desk, ready to work, I found a pile of colorful files. Wait, wasn't I supposed to be in charge of rehabilitation this afternoon? That's the thing. Sissy told Remy to do this, all by herself. Colleague said, pointing to the stack of files. These were files related to inventory management. By herself? I'll help once you're done. Colleague whispered, glancing at Sissy, before hurrying away. Inventory now? And all by myself? Today's overtime is confirmed. From that moment on, Sissy's harassment of me only worsened. You've been sighing a lot lately. Are you okay? I'm having a hard time getting along with my boss. I love my work, though. At home, I tried not to think about work, but my husband and daughter were worried about my constant sighing. Mom, don't overdo it. Encouraged by my husband and daughter, I managed to keep working. Then one day during work, I got a call from an unknown number. Hello, this is Sunshine Medical Center. May I speak to James's wife? That's correct. Your husband was in an accident and brought here. Thankfully, his life is not in danger, but could you come here as soon as possible? What? Yes, I'll be there right away. My husband's in an accident? I try to calm myself with deep breaths, but my heart races faster and faster. A colleague who was working with me looks at me with concern. Just leave the rest to me, Remy. Calm down. After I explain the situation, my colleague sends me off with these words. Rushing back to the office, I catch Sissy's eye. It seems my husband's been in an accident and has been taken to the hospital. Huh. Sissy responds indifferently without looking at my face. I need to leave early. Just go on then. It doesn't matter whether you're here or not. Without even looking at me, Sissy says this with an eerie smile. Sissy's nagging continues, but I ignore her, hurriedly prepare, and leave the office. Arriving at the hospital, I find my husband's left leg wrapped in bandages. Remy, I'm sorry to have worried you. I broke my left leg, but as you can see, I'm fine. My husband waves both hands to show me. I was told that his life wasn't in danger, but until I saw him, I was beside myself with worry. Don't scare me like that anymore. I'm sorry. Tears of relief overflow as my husband gently takes my hand. He broke his femur and will be hospitalized for 2 months. It will be a few months until he can return to normal life and work. From now on, I'll support the family. I declared this in front of my husband to bolster myself. From that day on, our life changed completely. Although it was already quite busy, now I had to care for my daughter, work, and handle my husband's laundry, all by myself. I could only sleep for about 3 hours. Moreover, I had to adjust my work schedule for my daughter's childcare, drop-off, and pickup. My colleagues said, "We help each other in times of trouble." But Sissy took every opportunity to put me down. You can't come early or stay late because of childcare? Normally, parents would help out or something. Anyway, it's because you're so spacey that you guys get into accidents. You and your family really are something, interfering with work like this. Huh. Sissy laughs snidely. If I could get my parents to come, I would have done so from the start. But both our families are far away, and there's no one nearby to rely on. Others were in the office, but no one cared. Well, if they spoke up to Sissy, they'd become her next target, so no one would risk defending me. I was already feeling constrained by having others do my work, but being criticized not only for me, but also for my family, had shredded my heart. That evening, when I stopped by my husband's hospital, he patted the bed, beckoning me to sit. Remy, something's wrong. You don't have to endure anymore. I had been desperately trying to be strong for the family, but my husband seemed to see right through me. I finally opened up to him about Sissy's harassment. After hearing everything, my husband quietly said, Remy, don't push yourself anymore. How about resigning from that workplace? Money's not a concern. As long as you're smiling, our family will be happy. My husband's words began to heal my battered heart. James, thank you. With that, I submitted my resignation the next day. You're just quitting your job in the end, huh? Ignoring Sissy's nagging to the very end, I tidied up my belongings and left the company I had worked at for 10 years. With extra time on my hands, I started cooking with my daughter, accompanying my husband in his rehabilitation, and cherishing the time spent with my family. From the outside, it seemed like I was selflessly supporting my daughter and husband, but in reality, they were the ones helping me. Spending time with the two of them rejuvenated my stress-weakened heart, and I began to feel happy every day. Mom, let's bake cookies today! Sure, we ran out of butter, so let's go buy some. Now I have time to leisurely make sweets with Mabel after she gets back from the childcare center. Hoping for this blissful time to continue, I decided to seriously start studying. 4 years later, after finishing shopping and waiting for the elevator, I was called from behind. Remy, long time no see. A familiar voice. My body twitched in response. Turning around, the voice indeed belonged to my former boss, Sissy. I was at a loss for words, but Sissy continued. I live on the top floor here. Oh, really? I had been tense until then, but Sissy's words made my lips loosen. I shifted into work mode. Thank you for renting from us. What do you mean? Sissy couldn't understand my words. The owner of this high-rise condo is my husband. What are you talking about? Sissy's eyes darted around. In fact, my husband had bought this high-rise condominium when it was newly built 4 years ago. Then, right after that, he had an accident. While he was hospitalized, I quit my job and started studying frantically, taking over the owner's duties for the condo in place of my husband. Feeling suited for the owner's role, I continued to support my husband, even after he was discharged. I continued my studies, and now I own and manage a condominium myself. How do you like our high-rise condo? The view from the top floor is stunning, isn't it? By the way, a new condominium was built in the neighboring city recently, and I am the owner there. It's close to the station and very convenient. If you know anyone who wants to live in a condo, I can give you a brochure. Shut up! I was eagerly pitching, thinking that someone living on the top floor would likely have money. But Sissy interrupted my words, screeching, "Why do you get to have all the good things?" She's not my boss anymore, so I'll tell her what I really think. I made up my mind to do just that. What are you talking about? Working hard only to be belittled by you. What's so good about that? Sissy's face twisted in anger. You have a loving family, don't you? What? Sissy looked down, murmuring softly, "If I had children, I wouldn't feel so miserable." Then Sissy revealed her inner thoughts in a voice so soft it was barely audible. According to her, she had married, but was unable to have children. She wanted them, but things didn't work out with her husband, who desired children too, and they divorced. As a result, all that remained for Sissy was her job, and she worked tirelessly to outperform everyone else. But every time she saw younger people getting married, having children, and taking a year of parental leave, she felt miserable. My busy mornings, rushing into work, seemed to her a symbol of happiness, and she was actually envious. At the same time, she couldn't stand my apparent happiness, blessed with a child and husband, and that's why she was harassing me. Hearing this didn't bring up any sympathy in me. Mixing personal feelings with work and harassing your subordinates is the worst thing a boss can do. I lost my job because of you. What you did is unforgivable. I said that and rode the elevator alone, closing the door. Sissy didn't apologize until the end and just stood there, looking down. Now, 3 months later, Sissy moved out of the apartment building. Rumor had it that after I quit, Sissy started targeting other staff who were raising children and continued harassing them, as she did to me. During this time, the company established a harassment consultation service due to stricter compliance in recent years. One day, there was an anonymous tip about Sissy's harassment, and the company conducted an internal investigation. They confirmed the facts and also uncovered that I had been forced to resign due to the harassment. Taking the situation seriously, the company decided to demote Sissy and transfer her to a lower-paying department. As a result, Sissy could no longer afford her rent and had to leave the high-rise apartment building. It's only what she deserved. My husband, who had been worried that Sissy might harass me again, seemed genuinely relieved that she had left the high-rise apartment building. I'm really thankful that you encouraged me to resign back then. Me too. I'm always thankful to Remy. Let's keep it going. With that, my husband reached out his hand. We shook hands and looked up at the vast sky. Our family's future will surely continue, just like this sky. Surrounded by the clear sky, we felt happiness in our everyday life together, as a trio. From the bottom of my heart, I wished to continue this way forever.
I've been living abroad using my husband's savings. I also bought a luxury car worth $10 million. The sister-in-law who appeared at my brother's memorial service boasted in front of our parents and relatives. I'm going to live on life insurance and survivor benefits from now on. I couldn't help but laugh at my brother's wife, who said this with a triumphant look. My laughter caused my parents and relatives to burst into laughter too. My brother's wife, who didn't understand what was happening, quickly turned red in the face and screamed.
What's so funny?
I answered her hysterical question with a laugh. You spent my brother's savings, didn't you? My condolences.
What?
I told my brother's wife the truth, who knew nothing. My name is Ethan, 28 years old. I'm just an ordinary office worker at a mid-sized company. I'm living alone and enjoying my life. I have a brother, Caleb, who is 4 years older than me. He's a bit timid, but very kind, and he always treated me well. He was a good man and did well in his studies, so after graduating from a prestigious university, he got a job at a top company. He moved out when he got a job, but sent money to our parents, wanting to be filial, and gave me presents on my birthday. We didn't see each other as often, but I loved my brother, and we would playfully compete to see who would get married first. My kind-hearted brother, who cared for his family, suddenly couldn't provide financial support after turning 30. Our parents didn't ask for financial support in the first place, so they didn't ask why, thinking he must have needed the money. I was a little worried and contacted my brother, but he just said, "It's okay, there's nothing to worry about." A year after financial support stopped, my brother brought his fiancée home. Her name was Olivia, and an employee of my brother's subsidiary.
Caleb is considered a young hope, and he's the fastest rising star among his peers.
I felt uncomfortable with Olivia, who spoke in a cloying voice. It felt like she was marrying him because he was a rising star in a big company, not because of who he was. As far as I knew, my brother had little experience with women. I was worried, but seeing my brother's happy face, I couldn't say anything. Despite my concerns, my brother got married. I received occasional lovey-dovey messages, so I thought they were happy. However, after half a year of marriage, a disturbing atmosphere began to emerge. My brother asked for a loan.
Ethan, I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I have to pay for something at work temporarily, but I don't have any cash on hand. I'll pay you back as soon as I get reimbursed.
It was unthinkable for my prudent brother to be without money. I'm sorry. I'm a bit tight right now, too.
That's okay. Sorry for the sudden request. I'll figure something out.
After talking to my brother, I immediately called home. Hello, Mom. Has my brother contacted you lately?
Contacted? Did Caleb ask you for money too, Ethan?
What? He asked you guys too?
He's been contacting us occasionally for a while now, asking if we could return the financial support money if we had any left, or lend him a little. It's strange for the prudent Caleb. Daddy and I were just talking about it.
That's concerning. I wonder what's gotten into my brother all of a sudden.
We're planning to talk to Caleb soon. Will you come too, Ethan?
Of course. Let me know when it's scheduled. And so it was decided that we would talk to my brother. On the day of the discussion, my brother was surprised to see me at our parents' house.
Why is Ethan here too? Well, never mind. So how much can you lend me?
My brother carefully asked our parents.
Caleb, you were always prudent with money.
What's going on that you're even asking your sister for a loan? My brother's face turned angry at Daddy's words.
If you're not lending me the money, then I'm leaving.
Wait, we're not done talking.
Enough. There's nothing to talk about. Leave me alone.
Ignoring Daddy's restraint, my brother left. I had never seen my brother raise his voice before, so Mom and I were stunned for a while. I was concerned about my brother's pale face when I saw him after a long time. but he wouldn't answer my calls. Sometime after that discussion, we received a call that my brother had collapsed at work. When we rushed to the hospital, my brother was asleep, connected to various tubes, looking even paler than when we last saw him. Olivia was there too, perfectly made up and dressed in designer clothes, despite having supposedly rushed over. According to the doctor, he had terminal cancer, and there was nothing they could do. Olivia cried out loud when she heard the news. My brother was admitted to the hospital, and as soon as our parents left the room to prepare for his stay, Olivia spoke to me.
I'm busy, so I can't take care of him. You do it.
Olivia wasn't crying at all, as if her earlier tears were an illusion. While I was taken aback, Olivia continued, irritated.
It's really inconvenient that he has terminal cancer when I still need him to earn money. Don't contact me unless his life is in danger.
With those harsh words, Olivia left the room. I was still unable to comprehend what had happened when my brother spoke.
Ethan, I'm sorry.
My brother, who should have been asleep, called out to me. Big brother, when did you wake up?
When Daddy and the others left. That's Olivia's true nature. She's extravagant and sees me as nothing but a cash cow.
So that's why you were struggling with money.
I was over the moon when such a glamorous beauty approached me. Even after realizing her true nature, I couldn't break away because of my infatuation. And this is the result. I'm truly sorry for involving you.
Don't apologize, big brother. I couldn't find the words to say to my brother. After a long silence, my brother slowly spoke.
Ethan, I can't die like this. I need your help.
My brother's eyes were filled with determination. I took caregiver leave and used remote work arrangements, cooperating with my parents to care for my brother in the hospital. My brother, visibly weakened, but we spent peaceful moments together, going for walks in his wheelchair when he felt well, and watching movies. I think those times allowed me to accept my brother's passing. Less than 2 months after his admission, my brother's condition suddenly worsened, and he was gone. After the first day of hospitalization, Olivia never visited once. Even when my brother's condition suddenly worsened, she didn't answer the phone. When I finally reached her after his death, she responded to the news with a seemingly pleased voice.
Oh, really? I understand.
After that, we were busy with the wake and the funeral preparations, but Olivia never showed up. However, she appeared at the funeral, crying loudly, and then declared herself the family representative, starting to speak on her own.
If only I had noticed his illness sooner. I went to the hospital every day and took care of my husband. I wanted to support him even more.
Holding my brother's portrait and speaking through tears, I felt anger rise within me as I watched Olivia, but I told myself it wasn't the time to act. Our parents and relatives, knowing the situation, looked at Olivia with disbelief. After the funeral, Olivia came to my parents and me.
I'll file the divorce certificate tomorrow. We'll be strangers, so don't contact me again. Handle the ashes and grave as you please. It's none of my concern now, but All of my husband's inheritance is mine, so don't try to take it.
Olivia said what she wanted and quickly left. My parents and I were more dumbfounded than angry. Just a little more patience, Daddy muttered, and Mommy and I nodded. Time flew by, and the day of my brother's memorial service arrived. Although Olivia had told us not to contact her, I sent her a message anyway. As relatives gathered at our family home, sharing memories of my brother, a luxury car pulled up outside. Wondering what was happening, I saw Olivia, dressed in a flashy suit and carrying a high-end brand bag, stride out. As soon as Olivia entered our family home, she began to boast.
I've been on a heartbroken trip abroad. First-class flights and luxury hotels were amazing.
I made a clearly displeased face, but Olivia continued, oblivious.
He always told me to save money because he had none, but he was secretly saving. I used all of that savings to buy that car, a $10 million luxury car. You must be jealous. Olivia, what are you here for today? If you want to boast, do it elsewhere,
Mom said calmly and emotionlessly.
Oh, Ethan was the one who contacted me, even though I told him not to.
Olivia glanced at me but quickly looked back at Mom.
Well, I have some business too. I'm planning to live on survivor benefits and life insurance, but I need various documents for the application. I'd like you to prepare them for me.
Olivia said this with a triumphant expression, trying to hand Mom a paper with instructions for the insurance application. What a selfish woman. She told us not to get involved with her, yet she tries to use us when it suits her. I was filled with anger. But contrary to my emotions, laughter welled up. My parents and relatives joined in my laughter, and the room erupted in uproarious laughter. Olivia, not understanding what had happened, looked bewildered but quickly turned red-faced and screamed.
What's going on? What's so funny?
I answered Olivia's hysterical scream with laughter. You spent my brother's savings, didn't you? My condolences.
What? My condolences?
My brother had debts. I wonder if there's quite a bit of interest now. Oh, and the beneficiary of the life insurance was changed to me a long time ago.
What? Wait, what do you mean?
I was dumbfounded, seeing Olivia in a panic. Laughter welled up again, but I somehow suppressed it and continued to speak. I heard a lot about you from my brother. How you told him to earn more, to work more if he had time to come home. How you verbally abused him. How you never did housework and just went out to play. And then you abandoned him as soon as he got sick. My brother resented you. He wouldn't leave money to someone he resented. I continued to speak, staring at Olivia, who was glaring at me with bloodshot eyes. I borrowed money in my brother's name at his request. Since he was an employee of a major company, he could borrow quite a bit, and we used that money for hospitalization and funeral expenses. Thanks to that, he had a comfortable stay in a private room, and we could afford a high-grade funeral plan. As for the life insurance, my brother changed the beneficiary to me as soon as he knew your true nature.
That's a lie. It has to be. There's no way I'd be fooled by such a lie.
Olivia's beautiful face twisted ugly as she glared and yelled at me. If you think it's a lie, why don't you check? Perhaps sensing from my attitude that it wasn't a lie, Olivia let out a piercing scream. I'll renounce the inheritance! I don't need the debt! That won't be possible, one of the relatives said to Olivia. You've already touched Caleb's inheritance. This will be judged as an intention to inherit, so you can't renounce it. Olivia snapped at the calmly speaking cousin. Who are you? But turned pale when she saw the business card handed to her. A lawyer. Yes, our family had a cousin who was a lawyer. My brother had been in contact with the lawyer cousin, intending to make Olivia touch his inheritance before she knew about the debt. It seemed he had thought a lot about the timing of the debt. Olivia slumped to the floor and spoke to me as if clinging to me. Hey, you're his brother, so you're my brother too, right? You should help me pay off the debt. We're family after all. What? What are you talking about? If you filed a divorce certificate, you and I are complete strangers. I have nothing to do with a stranger's debt. I felt a sense of disgust in Olivia's voice and snapped back sharply. Oh, and the apartment you're living in now? It's in my daddy's name, so please leave as soon as possible. I said that as a finishing blow and then went into the back of the room. Olivia continued to make a fuss, but the relatives kicked her out. After the memorial service, Olivia started calling me and my family home every day asking for help. She was being charged for the debt and the inheritance tax. Olivia sold her $10 million luxury car and the brand items she had collected to pay off the debt and inheritance tax. But it seems she still hasn't paid it all off. At first, I found it amusing and responded, but it gradually became a nuisance. And when I threatened to consult the police if she continued to persist, she stopped immediately. Olivia was also reluctant to leave the apartment, so we issued an eviction notice through our lawyer cousin. When our cousin contacted Olivia, she apparently begged our uncle to help her, but he firmly refused. He also told her that if she continued to trouble our family, he would consider legal action, and she reluctantly left. Later, another relative reported seeing Olivia entering a store rumored to provide excessive services. Her beauty was gone, and she looked haggard, clearly not living a decent life. I put my hands together in front of my brother's memorial tablet. Brother, your life or death revenge succeeded. I felt a sense of relief, having avenged my beloved brother's regret.
Just leave the gift and go. I don't consider you as family. On the day of my father-in-law's funeral, my mother-in-law said this to me, making a shooing gesture. Besides, if people find out that a poor and disgraceful woman like you is my daughter-in-law, it would be a shame for the entire family. I was worn out by my mother-in-law's attitude and harassment, so I decided to do as she said and just leave the gift and go. 3 days after the funeral, I was struck by mysterious nausea and ill health, and I went back to my parents' home to recuperate. While resting in the living room, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my frantic mother-in-law grabbed my hands and said, "I'm sorry, I had no idea this was happening." My name is Rosemary. I had been single forever, but at the age of 30, I met Kevin through a hobby class that a friend invited me to. We hit it off because of our many common interests, and after a year of dating, we got married. Kevin is the same age as me. He's very handsome, kind, highly educated, and came from a wealthy and respectable family. I didn't know about his background when we started dating, so I didn't choose him for those reasons. In fact, I felt that there must be many more wonderful women who would be a better match for him than me. When I found out about Kevin's qualifications, I was so worried that we might be mismatched, and I wondered if I was really good enough for him. But Kevin accepted me. I love you, Rosemary. You're the one. I accepted his proposal, and we got married. He's the son of a listed enterprise CEO and is on the fast track to success. I couldn't help but wonder why such an impressive man hadn't had any relationships with women until he was 30, but I was so ecstatic that I didn't have time to worry about it. He never let his father's power get to his head or become lazy. He worked hard and climbed the corporate ladder, and it seems he was finally recognized as a successor by his father, the president, just recently. My husband and father-in-law were very busy preparing to take over the company, so they were rarely home, and we didn't have much family time. It seemed like they only came home to sleep, but they never neglected me. They would contact me when they had time, and they prioritized spending time with me on their rare days off. Honestly, he was a good husband. I vowed to support him forever. I was truly happy to be his wife, except for one thing. After getting married, I moved into Kevin's family home. I had planned to work to repay the student loans I had taken out during college, but Kevin pleaded, "I'll work hard to earn enough for the both of us, so please stay home and support me." I gave in to my husband's insistence and quit my job, moving into my in-laws' house. Honestly, I liked my job, so quitting was a bit of a shock. It turned out that the reason I quit my job was that my mother-in-law, Josie, had interfered with Kevin. She had apparently convinced him that a working wife would reflect poorly on the husband. Because of that, I ended up spending most of my day at my in-laws' house. My husband and father-in-law were rarely home because they were busy, but my stay-at-home mother-in-law, Josie, was always there, and I spent a lot of time with her. But this mother-in-law was a person to be wary of. Josie seemed to dislike me, tormenting me with harassment and snide remarks. The reason was probably that she thought I was beneath their social status. Her family was wealthy and consisted of business owners. Moreover, they came from a good family background, and apparently there were many influential figures in politics, finance, medicine, chemistry, and various other fields in their clan. Almost all their family members were highly educated, having graduated from Harvard or other prestigious universities. And my mother-in-law herself had graduated from a renowned university. She was proud of this and flaunted it. On the other hand, my family was just an ordinary one. My parents were regular office workers, and we were neither poor nor wealthy. I attended a regular college, and I paid for my tuition with scholarships. It wasn't just my family background or university that Josie complained about. She also criticized my appearance. Josie in her 50s was beautiful and youthful, always dressed in flashy designer brands. She had been a model when she was young, won beauty contests in college, and was working in sales at the largest advertising agency before getting married. I, on the other hand, had no interest in designer brands and preferred to spend my money on anime and game merchandise. As a result, I was never considered beautiful. I did the bare minimum with makeup and fashion and took care of my figure, but my appearance was quite plain. Naturally, the glamorous world of modeling, beauty contests, and major advertising agencies was foreign to me. My social media was all about games and anime. Josie seemed really displeased that her son had married someone as plain and low as me, both in education and family background. So, she harassed me in every way she could think of. She would intentionally spill Coke on my freshly washed clothes, or mess up a room I had just cleaned. Entertainment was forbidden. I was forced to quit the hobby that led me to meet Kevin, and she deleted all my contacts. My anime and game collections were sold off at a very low price, and the money became Josie's pocket money. I couldn't even go shopping without being attacked with nasty comments. My clothes and cosmetics were sold with the excuse that a wife doesn't need to be fashionable, and of course, that money also went to Josie. Makeup was forbidden, and I was only allowed to wear sweatpants at home and a suit when outside. All my savings from my single days were confiscated. The dinners I made were thrown away. Plus, they were dumped on the floor, and Josie would laughingly take pictures with her phone and share them on social media. By the way, the only food I was allowed to eat was leftovers. "A perfect meal for a poor, pathetic person," she would say, sharing and laughing with her friends. Birds of a feather flocked together indeed, as my mother-in-law's friends were all wealthy and glamorous, yet they were all nasty people who looked down on others. Look at my poor daughter-in-law. How could she have lived like this until now? If it were me, I'd be too ashamed to live. I had no choice but to endure this humiliation. After enduring this life for about a year, my father-in-law passed away. He had been suffering from terminal cancer and had actually lived longer than the prognosis. I was tasked with preparing for his funeral. Kevin was swamped with taking over the company, so he had no time to prepare for the funeral. "I don't know anything about this. Rosemary, can you handle it for me?" Josie said and dumped everything on me, lounging around without lifting a finger. I became extremely busy preparing for my father-in-law's funeral, sparing no time for sleep, and my fatigue reached its limit. Somehow, I managed to finish the preparations, and the day of the funeral arrived. However, when I tried to attend the funeral, Josie stood in front of me and said something outrageous. "Rosemary, please just leave the gift and go home." I couldn't hide my surprise at this sudden request. "I don't consider you as family. Besides, if people find out that a plain and unattractive woman like you is Kevin's wife, it would be a disgrace to the whole family." From my perspective, my mother-in-law's hysterical ranting was far more embarrassing, but I knew that arguing back would only heat things up and cause more commotion. "Understood," I replied, and left the funeral venue after placing the gift. 3 days after the funeral, I was struck by mysterious nausea and ill health, so I went back to my parents' house to recuperate. I couldn't rest at home with Josie's harassment. My parents were at work, and I was resting alone in the living room when the doorbell rang. Looking at the camera, I saw Josie repeatedly ringing the doorbell. At first, I ignored it, but she kept ringing the doorbell and yelling at the front door, causing a nuisance to the neighbors, so I reluctantly opened the door. She probably came to take me back, her outlet for household stress and frustration. However, contrary to my expectations, Josie suddenly apologized to me. "What is going on?" I said, unable to suppress my annoyance, and Josie, in a desperate state, threw words of apology at me. "I didn't know. I had no idea it would come to this." So here's what happened. My father-in-law had noticed Josie's harassment towards me. Initially, Josie hid her true nature in front of my father-in-law and Kevin. But my father-in-law, sensing something off in Josie's relationship with me, confronted her, and she readily confessed. He tried to persuade her to stop the harassment several times, but Josie wouldn't listen. Instead, she became defiant and started bad-mouthing me to my father-in-law. For my father-in-law, who was in the final stages of cancer, persuading Josie was all he could manage. Feeling sorry for me as I was wasting away from the stress of Josie's harassment, my father-in-law left a will before passing away. It stated that he would leave all his inheritance to me. "Please, Rosemary, I apologize for everything. Share the inheritance with me," Josie begged desperately. "It's not fair. I was robbed of everything and then married. After taking everything from me, leaving me nothing is just wrong." She screamed in a state of confusion. There was a sad story behind the seemingly glamorous mother-in-law. Her marriage to her husband was a political one. Josie had a lover to whom she had promised to marry. However, her family's business was on the brink of bankruptcy at the time, so they agreed to assist Josie's family on the condition that she married my father-in-law. Josie's life was hell, forced apart from her fiancé, whom she had loved dearly, and marry a man she didn't like. My father-in-law also had a lover, but due to differences in social ranks, everyone around him strongly opposed the marriage, and they reluctantly parted ways. However, he seemed to have continued his relationship with his former lover, even after marrying Josie. On the other hand, Josie suffered terrible harassment from her mother-in-law, Kevin's grandmother, at a level incomparable to what I endured from Josie. She was virtually imprisoned, overworked, and forced to quit the job she loved. Because it was a political marriage, even her parents turned against her. Her husband was indifferent and prioritized his lover, and divorce was not allowed, nor was she allowed to see her former lover. In such a life, her only son, Kevin, was her sole reason for living. Josie finally regained her freedom when Kevin's grandmother passed away, but her love for her son had become completely twisted. She had harassed and driven away women who got close to Kevin. The reason Kevin, who was good-looking, well-off, from a good family, and presumably had no personality flaws, had no dating experience until the age of 30, was also due to his mother. Naturally, I was no exception. Josie could never forgive me, someone who had taken her son and had a proper marriage, something she was not allowed. So she tried every trick in the book to harass me and make Kevin and me divorce. I felt sorry for Josie after hearing her circumstances. However, "Josie, I certainly sympathize with your situation, but..." I approached Josie and whispered in her ear, "You've repeatedly called me poor and unattractive and made fun of me with your friends, you know. That was... You haven't forgotten about throwing away my food and messing up the room I just cleaned, have you? So that's what I'm sorry. Apologies don't solve everything, do they, Josie?" She was stunned by my words. While Josie's situation was pitiable, it didn't mean I could just pretend her harassment never happened. "I won't give you the inheritance. I'll use it meaningfully for repaying my student loans and for the education of the child who will be born in the near future. No matter the circumstances, I would probably never forgive Josie for what she did to me." "I never thought you were like that. I misjudged you, Mom." Kevin's angry voice echoed through the living room. Kevin had learned about his mother's harassment towards me through the will. He also found out that she had harassed every woman who got close to him since his student days, and in his anger, he declared he no longer wanted any relations with her. "Rosemary, I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner." Kevin hugged me, crying and apologizing. It wasn't Kevin's fault, as he was too busy to come home often. I even felt guilty for making him cry and apologize. Josie, who was cut off by Kevin, was yelling something, but Kevin's determination was firm, and we as a couple decided to move out of the in-laws' house soon. I stayed at my parents' house until the move was complete. By the way, the in-laws' house was in Kevin's name, so it was quickly put up for sale. As a result, Josie had no choice but to leave the house, and is now forced to live alone in a cheap apartment. Since she's still in her 50s, she's working, something she's not used to. Also, word of her harassment spread throughout the neighborhood. Originally, she was disliked for flaunting her wealth and constantly showing off to those around her, and now she's become completely isolated from her neighbors. Even her former friends, who once praised Josie and laughed at me for being poor, have turned on her and are making fun of her now that she's living in poverty. Incidentally, Josie went to see her former fiancé for the first time in 30 years, but he had long forgotten about her, had married, and had a family. I also heard that she caused a scene at his doorstep, leading to police involvement. Her once prided beauty has also drastically changed due to stress. I recently saw Josie in town wearing tattered clothes, her face suddenly aged, and she had gained a lot of weight. On the other hand, Kevin successfully took over the company and became its president. The business is thriving and on the rise. We as a couple moved to a high-rise apartment close to my parents' home. We further increased the assets left by my father-in-law through investments and are leading a prosperous life. I vow to devote myself to my husband, Kevin, and the baby in my belly from now on.
My name is Sherry, and I'm 41 years old. I'm juggling a busy life, working alongside my husband and cheering on my son who's passionate about soccer. When I was a student, my parents never came to my extracurricular activities. But now, it's expected for parents to take turns supporting their kids at my son's middle school soccer club. Honestly, it's a hassle to run around after work. Still, I want to support my son who's all fired up about winning the league championship. So, I can't slack off when it comes to helping out during practice. This year, the team is especially strong. The starting lineup is filled with motivated and skilled players, boosting the team's morale. We're all working hard, aiming for that long-desired championship. But with that comes the inevitable parent interactions within the club. Yes, the so-called parent politics. And lately, it's been causing me some stress. Sherry, you really need to get here earlier. Even though I arrived 10 minutes before the scheduled time, Jewel, a mom who likes to take charge, complains to me. I think I'm on time. Plus, there are others who haven't arrived yet. That's right. For some reason, Jewel always singles me out. Well, Sherry, you make it so obvious that you are busy because you are working. You don't even wear makeup and you never join us for tea. I don't recall ever making such a fuss about being busy. Sure, I don't wear makeup and I can't join daytime tea sessions because of work. It's also true that it is related to work. But what does that have to do with the soccer club? Frankly, if you have to work to make ends meet, I don't know why you'd even think of joining a soccer club. Excuse me? If you can afford to be in this club, you should be a stay-at-home mom with both time and money to spare, Jewel declares. Well, I was about to argue, but other parents started gathering, and the atmosphere wasn't right for it. My son is doing great as a starter, and I generally get along well with the other parents, but every time I see Jewel, I can't help but feel uncomfortable. I've been trying to keep my distance, but then... We live on the top floor of that high-rise, the 40th floor. During a break in a practice game one weekend, Jewel pointed to what locals call the Kitten Tower, a 40-story luxury high-rise that's become a symbol of the area. Oh, really? Confused, I just nodded along. It's not a big deal, it's a luxury condo, but it's too big for just the three of us. It's a hassle to clean without a housekeeper, you know. I didn't know how to respond, but another mom chimed in. The floors about 35 are one family per floor. The 360-degree view is such a luxury. Jewel seemed quite pleased with herself. Ah, I see. Oh, excuse me. My husband just arrived, so I'll be heading out for work. We're switching places to support our son. My husband had worked in the morning, and I was scheduled for the afternoon. We had planned to swap roles in supporting our son. While the other friendly moms wished me well, Jewel smirked. Oh, how hardworking you both are. Well, do your best. We'll all be going for tea after the game. All right then, take care. I didn't have time for more chit-chat, so I hurried off to work. Fast forward to the next week. Hey Sherry, I heard you live in a single-family home. Jewel spoke loudly, unnecessarily so. After you left the other day, your husband and I talked about homes. He mentioned you live in a single-family home. Is that true? Yes. I gave a vague answer. Sensing something unpleasant coming my way, Jewel grinned at my caution. He invited me over if I ever get the chance, so I'll take him up on that offer. Oh, well, that's not really... It was just a polite invitation, but Jewel seemed to take it seriously. Don't you all want to see Sherry's house? She must be proud of it. I'd feel awkward inviting people to my high-rise apartment. It might seem like I'm showing off. I hadn't heard anything about this from my husband, who would have told me if he'd actually extended such an invitation. Cornered, I felt trapped. I tried to think of an excuse, but Jewel had already involved the other moms. You know how upper-class homes offer room tours? I'm sure Sherry's house is small, so we don't need anything fancy. Let's get to know Sherry better, who's always too busy for tea. We'll have a tea party at her house at her convenience. Jewel started planning right away. I tried to decline multiple times, but she wouldn't back down, saying my husband had invited her. I'd let her arrogance slide because I didn't want to hassle, but her persistence was getting on my nerves. Don't worry, I'm sure you could only afford the house because both of you work. Even if you're a poor family with a low income, I'll appreciate your effort. That was the last straw. Fine, you're welcome to come. I had tolerated her looking down on me and mocking our dual-income lifestyle. But when she started belittling my husband, I couldn't let it slide any longer. Oh, really? Well, I'll take you up on that. But I wonder, will everyone fit in your house? Jewel smirked triumphantly. By the way, avoid the end of this month, okay? We're going on an overseas trip. It's a hustle to prepare, and honestly, traveling too much gets boring. I was fed up with Jewel's self-serving conversation. I was tired of this back and forth. Lately, I'd noticed that Jewel's condescending remarks were making the other moms uncomfortable. If this continued, it could even cause discord within the soccer team, so I decided to go ahead with the home tour. Finally, the day arrived. I was waiting at the meeting spot when Jewel pulled up in her car. Thanks for coming to meet us. Where is the parking? Oh, I told everyone here is parking because you said so. They'll all be driving here. Jewel grinned. It was obvious she was trying to make a mockery of the situation. You see, her call yesterday went like this. Sherry, does your house have parking? Some people with small properties rent separate parking spaces. You know, is your parking on site? Her question was only to confirm if we had parking, not whether they could come by car. I hadn't said a word about everyone driving over, but still. Oh, I see. Could you please park over there? There should be plenty of space for everyone else too. I directed Jewel to an open lot nearby. Oh, I see. Jewel seemed to click her tongue subtly. How convenient that there's an empty lot nearby. As Jewel muttered, the other moms started to arrive. Looks like everyone's here. Thanks for inviting us today, Sherry. So, is that your house? It's quite small and cute. It suits you perfectly. Jewel laughed, looking at a house right behind me. It's amazing you chose to live here, so close to that mansion. It's like you are being shown your limits. The other moms looked uncomfortable at Jewel's harsh laughter. I quickly spoke up. Ah, no, our house is over there. This building is for our housekeepers. Jewel burst into laughter when she looked where I pointed. Oh, on the other side of the mansion. I can't even see it from here. Shall we go? Jewel immediately started walking ahead. Jewel, the entrance is over here. I called out to Jewel as she walked past the gate to my home, and then opened it. Wait, this is your house, Sherry? What? Jewel let out a scream-like sound. Yes, the mansion Jewel had just mentioned was actually my home. The empty lot was a space we were planning to turn into a soccer field for the kids. The cute little house she referred to was the living quarters for our housekeepers. Please, come in. Our home is designed in mid-century modern style. I walked across our simple yet harmoniously designed front yard towards the entrance. Our housekeeper, who had been waiting, greeted me with, "Welcome back, ma'am," and helped us inside. Just then, my friend Stella unexpectedly dropped by. Sherry, I found something cute while I was out and bought it as a gift. Oh, am I interrupting? Stella started to leave, feeling awkward in front of the soccer moms, but they insisted she stay, so Stella joined us for tea. Oh, how rude to have friends drop by without an appointment, Jewel muttered, lacking her usual gusto. Ignoring her, I led everyone inside. Let's have a tour of the house later. For now, please have a seat. I'll prepare some tea and snacks. Is this for real? Jewel mumbled, half in shock, as I led her to the great room. The weather was nice, so the doors facing the courtyard were open, revealing well-maintained lawns and shimmering pond. You have a garden and a large pond inside your property? Jewel was speechless. Feel free to explore the garden. My husband designed both the house and the garden, so he'd love to hear your thoughts. While I was explaining, the housekeeper prepared the tea. Today's snacks are from my company, a product we're planning to launch soon. I hope you like them and would appreciate your feedback. The other moms cheered at the sight of the beautifully arranged snacks. Wait, Sherry? Your company? And your husband designed the house? What's this? Were you pretending to be poor? Tricking me and laughing behind my back? Jewel, who had been silent, suddenly blurted out this outrageous accusation. I never tricked anyone. If you didn't know, it's because you never asked. I was utterly exasperated. Let me take this opportunity to explain. I ran a company that focuses on next generation snacks. Due to hygiene reasons, I can't wear makeup, and because of my responsibilities, I can't be away from the company for long. So, I usually can't join you for tea. My husband also runs an architecture firm, so we are both working professionals. After reintroducing myself, the other moms applauded, but Jewel's mood plummeted. Who cares about this big, empty house? For your information, I live on the 40th floor of a high-rise. Just as I was about to respond to Jewel's sudden outburst, Stella clapped her hands in realization. Sherry, it's her, isn't it? I nodded at Stella's excited question. Then she talks to Jewel. Hey, you live on the 40th floor of what they call the Kitten Tower, right? Caught off guard by Stella's innocent question, Jewel regained her usual confidence. Yes, so what? Stella grinned and asked, Can you show us pictures of your place? The view from your room, maybe. You must have taken some on your phone, right? Stella tilted her head cutely, and the other moms chimed in, saying they'd love to see the pictures. However, Jewel feigned regret. Oh, I'm sorry. Living there has become so normal for me that I've never thought to take pictures. So no, I don't have any on my phone. Jewel made a disappointing face. Stella burst into laughter at Jewel's response. What's so funny? Jewel raised her voice, clearly irritated. I just thought it was amazing. You don't take pictures because it's so normal for you? I still can't help but capture the sunrise and sunset. Stella showed us her phone screen, displaying a beautiful sunset and a familiar landscape. Look, this is the exact image used in the Kitten Tower's promotional material. Oh, and there's Mia, my cat! I couldn't help but get excited at the beautiful scenery and the appearance of Stella's beloved cat, Mia. What are you talking about? Jewel scolded, so I decided to enlighten her. She's the real resident of the 40th floor of the Kitten Tower. What? Jewel's tiny scream was directed at the key Stella pulled out. Designed exclusively for the upper floors of the Kitten Tower. It's not enough proof, so you're welcome to come over right now. Jewel's face twisted at Stella's smile. Every once in a while, I get inquiries through the front desk asking if I'm Jewel. Now it makes sense. You are the Jewel they were asking about. Stella's expression turned stern. It's quite a nuisance, you know. Confronted by Stella, the real resident of the 40th floor of the luxury high-rise, Jewel was visibly shaken. It seems she's been lying about living on the 40th floor of a luxury high-rise, not just in our soccer club, but elsewhere too. So, what's the real story? The next time one of your friends asks, you'll have to correct them, won't you? Cornered by Stella's questioning, Jewel trembled like a newborn fawn, attempting to flee. Tell the truth! Yikes! Blocked by an angry Stella, Jewel gasped and shook her head, but there was no escaping the truth. I live on the first floor. Jewel finally admitted, her shoulders slumping. Oh, the first floor. So, if you count from the top, that's the penthouse. Isn't that clever? Should we laugh it off? Though Stella's tone was playful, she was clearly furious. The other soccer moms all looked at Jewel with disdain. You know, some people deliberately chose to live on the lower floors of luxury buildings. Easier access to their apartments, easier to evacuate in case of emergencies, and the property value doesn't depreciate as quickly. But I doubt you had any of that in mind, did you, Jewel? When I asked, Jewel stammered. I have to go. Bye! She hurriedly made her exit, barely even saying goodbye. I don't get why she had to lie about living on the 40th floor when living in a luxury building is impressive enough. As I spoke my mind, Stella burst into laughter. You know, Sherry, you might not be aware of this since you've only lived in a single-family homes, but in luxury high-rises, the price varies greatly depending on the floor. Some people really care about the hierarchy based on which floor they live on. That's probably why Jewel wanted to show off. I love heights, so I chose a high floor, but some people see that as a status symbol, Stella explained. I shook my head. No way, heights scare me. The view you showed me was beautiful, and I'd love to see it, but I'd probably freeze if I went up there. My husband even designed our house as a single story because he knows I'm afraid of heights. Stella laughed even more at this. Jewel really picked the wrong person to act arrogant with. Even if she did live on the 40th floor of a luxury high-rise, it couldn't compare to this sprawling single-story home made entirely of domestic wood. The other moms nodded in agreement with Stella's words. I'm not familiar with luxury high-rises due to my fear of heights, but if Stella says so, it must be true. Sorry for putting a damper on our fun tea party, Stella said, looking apologetic. But I was more than satisfied with how things turned out, especially since I wanted to put a stop to Jewel's incessant talking. Let's get back to our tea party, shall we? We all enjoyed the rest of our time together. 3 months later, Jewel and her family moved far away. Turns out, she had been spreading lies not just in the soccer club, but elsewhere too. When her web of lies unraveled, it seemed like she no longer had a place in this town. I was initially worried about our soccer team, but with Jewel's self-righteous leadership gone, a kid who had been hiding his skills suddenly blossomed. In fact, the team's atmosphere and skill level improved so much that winning the league now seems like a real possibility. Between you and me, I was really fed up with Jewel's arrogant attitude. Thanks to being friends with Sherry, I can now go support the soccer club without any worries. I really appreciate it. It seems like the bonds among the soccer moms have deepened even more. Let's aim for the championship, guys. Sporting my energetic child as they run around, along with my hardworking husband, is my daily joy.
Next week, let's go to the vacation home and have a barbecue.
When Dad said that, our family was thrilled. The vacation home is an hour-and-a-half drive away. I always enjoyed the drive there, and going to the vacation home was always something to look forward to. People might think we're rich when I mention the vacation home, but my parents bought it during the so-called bubble era. I don't know much about it, but apparently back then it wasn't just the rich who bought vacation homes. It was common even among ordinary people. Dad, let's go fishing. Going fishing with Dad in the nearby river was a tradition when we went to the vacation home. Meanwhile, Mom and Melissa would play in the river or relax at the vacation home. This vacation home, which our family often visited, was filled with memories. I remember the time I drove my parents there as an adult, they were both moved. But then, Mom passed away from illness, and 3 years later, Dad followed her. They were a loving couple, so I think they must be living happily together in heaven. With that thought, I am riding my motorcycle to the vacation home after a long time. My name is Casey. I am a 30-year-old clerical worker. I love motorcycles, and since getting my license, I often go touring. It's definitely influenced by my father. People say it's a masculine hobby, but I like what I like. I am enjoying my life now and not actively looking for a boyfriend or husband. I hope to find a good partner eventually, but I'm not actively looking right now. Melissa, who is 6 years older, got married before Mom passed away and is now a mother of 2. We used to be close, but I don't get along with Lucas, so we hardly see each other. Lucas, 3 years older than Melissa, started a business and he often belittles me for being just a clerical worker in a small company. So I avoid him as much as possible. If you start a business, you're the president, whether you have 1 employee or 100. President is president. Whether it's pride or something else, I often hear him say, "I am the president." Well, it doesn't matter to me. But then, something happened that I couldn't ignore. It was about 6 months before my father passed away. His chronic illness worsened and he was hospitalized. Living close to my parents' house, I often visited and watched over my father. I was estranged from Melissa and her husband at the time, but I felt it would be unfair to my father not to tell Melissa if something happened, so I told her the situation. The hospital was about a 30-minute drive from Melissa's house. I thought she would come to visit, but she never did, saying it was too hard to bring the 2 kids. I never heard from my father that Melissa had come, so she probably didn't. Lucas is head over heels for Melissa, and he has spoiled and flattered her since they were dating. And Melissa has come to think that's normal and her attitude towards others has changed. In a word, she's lost her compassion. When she got married, I think she stopped thinking of us as family. "My new family is my family," she declared. Probably she found our parents who would scold her for being selfish annoying. Living a life spoiled by Lucas who would let her do anything, I didn't want to be involved with Melissa and her husband, and I have hardly been in touch with them since Melissa's wedding. Yet the moment I informed them of my father's death, Melissa and her husband started to cozy up to me. At the funeral, Melissa whispered in my ear, "Hey, how much is the inheritance?" What? Is this the place to talk about that? I couldn't believe my ears, but Melissa's eyes were serious. Lucas, sitting next to her, was looking at me too. I'll sort it out later, so I don't know the details, but I don't think it's a significant amount. I had planned to pay for my father's hospital bills, but he insisted on using his savings, so we used what he had saved for the hospital expenses. Even after the funeral, I was busy greeting relatives and funeral home staff. But Melissa and her family were relaxing as if it were someone else's business. And as I passed by Melissa, she and her husband said, "Hey, can we go home now?" Sure enough, Melissa had changed. The old Melissa loved her father and would never have behaved this way at his funeral. She would have been sobbing, but this is how it is now. I became sad.
Hey, we can't leave until we have settled the inheritance,
Lucas said, laughing. I was angered by his words and raised my voice without thinking. "So we can't talk about the inheritance now? Please go home. Thank you for coming today." Those were not words to say to Melissa and her husband. I knew it, but I didn't want to think of them as family. The funeral ended and I slept for a night, but I was so sad about various things that I jumped on my motorcycle and ended up at the vacation home. What should I do with this vacation home? It's also part of the inheritance. I was troubled. Then Melissa called me. When I answered the phone, Melissa suddenly said something outrageous. "Hey, Casey, re-announce the inheritance." What? So that's how it is? When I fell silent, Melissa started talking on her own. "After all, Casey, you're single, so you don't need money, right? We have 2 children and we never have enough money. You wouldn't understand being single, but raising children costs a lot." Melissa started talking about her children whenever she could. During the New Year's celebration, she would show up at her parents' house where relatives gathered, saying it was troublesome to stay long with the children only to take gift cards and sweets and leave. It was clear that she was after the gift cards. At some point, she became greedy for money and I began to dislike Melissa. And it's the same now that my father has passed away. Without mourning or thinking about my father, all she talks about is the inheritance. I was disappointed in Melissa. Hey, are you listening? So renounce the inheritance. Even if you call it an inheritance, most of my father's savings were used for hospital bills. So it's just the house and the vacation home. Besides, before I could finish, Melissa cut me off. All the more reason. If Casey renounces it, it will help us. There is no use talking to her anymore. But what will you do with the family home and the vacation home? You won't live in them, Melissa. Will you go to the vacation home for fun? You know, my family home is in Atlanta and no one lives there anymore, so selling it could make some money. As for the vacation home, I wonder what to do with it. I really wish you wouldn't sell the vacation home. It's filled with family memories. Casey, always talking about family. That's why you're not married yet. I was irritated by those words, but I somehow held back and continued. But lately, vacation home seems to be in demand, so maybe it could sell for a high price? It even has hot springs, so there must be many people who want it. Really? So if we sell that vacation home, we'll be rich? I could picture Melissa's excited face. I thought for a moment and decided to renounce the inheritance, but with one condition. Hey, how about you prepare the memorial service, Melissa? And if you plan to sell the house, use that money for the preparation? A memorial service? Oh, well, okay. So you'll renounce the inheritance then? Melissa's voice brightened. I was hesitant, but as a single person, I rarely visit the vacation home. If so, it would be better for Melissa's family to use it, and if Melissa decided to sell it, I would be fine with others using that memorable vacation home. I paused before replying. Gladly. So I decided to renounce the inheritance and return to my usual life. A year passed since my father's death. Melissa, how's the memorial service preparation? Casey, why are you contacting me now? Why are you angry? You've been ignoring my calls, Casey. Huh? Misunderstanding? Oh, right. I changed my mobile number. I had changed my number since my father's funeral, wanting to cut ties with Melissa and her husband. Of course, I hadn't told Melissa, so she couldn't contact me. I just called to check on the progress of the memorial service. So, is the memorial service ready? Huh? There's no way I could do it. I have 2 kids to take care of. You're single and free, Casey. You do it. I sighed. You promised back then, didn't you? This isn't what we agreed on. That's my line. What? What do you mean? You said the vacation home would sell high, so I thought I'd sell it right away, but it's not selling at all. Instead, I'm being charged thousands of dollars for maintenance and repair fees, and even for using the hot springs. What's going on? Oh, that I found out about it later. That's awful. It's a scam. A scam. Why, Melissa? You're the one who wanted me to renounce the inheritance, right? I said it might sell high, but that was just an amateur opinion. I didn't know if it would actually sell, but the family home sold, right? Oh, well, yes, Melissa stammered. That means the family home must have sold for a decent amount. Then use that money for the vacation home expenses and keep it for family use. If I want to use it, can I pay a fee? Well, so Melissa, you really want to sell it? I asked Melissa the obvious question once more. How about renting out the vacation home then? You could set up tents in the yard for camping. Camping seems to be trendy, and you could keep the hot springs and turn the rest into a campground. Of course, I'm just an amateur, so maybe consult with a real estate agent? Melissa's voice brightened noticeably. That's an idea. I hadn't thought of that. By the way, I can arrange the memorial service if you will pay the cost as promised. If you don't pay, then transfer the rights to the vacation home to me. I don't really expect her to transfer the rights to me now, but I had to say it this way, or Melissa seemed likely to break her promise. Melissa, who thinks she found a use for the vacation home, obviously had no intention of giving it up. As expected, she nodded. Well, I guess so. The vacation home seems to be working out, so I'll cover the costs. Then I'll arrange it. Once the amount is settled, transfer the money to my account first. Understood. The memorial service went smoothly. Of course, I made sure to get the money in advance so there was no loss. After the memorial service, Melissa said, "I'm glad Dad left us the vacation home. Our dreams are expanding." Lucas chimed in,
Our future is secure now. I'm grateful to father-in-law.
He never showed any gratitude before, but he says it now. I didn't want to be involved anymore, so I handled the conversation firmly and left quickly. 3 months later, my mobile phone rang. "Casey, you lied again." "What now? What's the problem?" "The vacation home." Melissa was furious and kept talking. "You said to rent it out, but no one wants it. And when I asked about turning it into a campground, they said tents are prohibited on that land. Now I'm just losing money. What are you going to do about it?" Wow, that's tough. I didn't know that. I listened to Melissa's anger and nodded. "It's not just tough, it's your fault, Casey." "Why is it my fault? You were the one who got greedy and wanted to renounce the inheritance. If we had properly divided inheritance, I would have researched and considered selling or managing it, but it's yours, Melissa, so it's not my place to interfere." Since Melissa kept ranting about fraud and demanding I do something, I interrupted her. "Besides, you have the money from selling the family home, right? It's not fair to take what you want and push off what's a burden." "That money's long gone." "What?" I couldn't help but let out a stunned voice. "Lucas failed in his business. Now we are in debt." The company of a man who always boasted about being a CEO and having business acumen went bankrupt? I couldn't help but laugh. "That's really tough." I said the words, but I couldn't stop laughing. "Hey, what are you laughing at? We have 2 kids, you know." "Both of your kids are already in middle school, right? The older one is about to be a high school student. High school students can work part-time. And if the family pulls together, you can quickly handle that amount of debt. Well, if Melissa and Lucas can humble themselves and ask for help, that is." "What? Casey, you're single. You can't understand what it's like to have a family." Sure. That was true until recently." "What?" "Oh, I got married. My partner is a business trader." "A business trader? Casey, where did you find such a wealthy person?" "Well, I think he earns more than our peers. He's a fellow motorcycle enthusiast." "Melissa, you always told me to stop riding or I would miss my chance to marry, but I got married safely. I'll be a mother next year." "What?" "So, just like Melissa, I'll be focusing on my new family. Please don't contact me anymore. Bye." I cheerfully hung up on the phone. I met my husband shortly after my father's death, and we hit it off right away. I think my worried father might have guided me to my husband. After my father's memorial service, my husband and I had a small wedding, and I soon discovered I was pregnant. I couldn't show my parents my wedding dress or their grandchild's face, but I'm sure they're watching from heaven. Dad, Mom, I'm very happy now.